First, we'll look at density-dependent limiting factors. Density-dependent limiting factors, think of density as how tightly the population is packed. Density-dependent limiting factors operate strongly when population density, the number of organisms per unit area, reaches a certain level. These factors do not strongly affect small scattered populations as much. Density-dependent limiting factors include competition, predation, herbivory, parasitism, disease, and stress from overcrowding. We'll look at each of those separately, so if any of those words were unfamiliar to you, we'll learn about them on the following slides. Some of these involve abiotic external factors, and others involve biotic external factors. When populations become crowded, individuals compete for food, water, space, sunlight, and other resources that are limited. Some individuals obtain enough to survive and reproduce. Others may obtain enough to live, but not enough to raise offspring. Still others may starve or die from lack of shelter. Thus, competition for changing resources or changing resource bases that are limited can lower birth rates, increase death rates, or both. Remember, any change to birth rates or death rates may affect population size. The four factors that affect population growth are birth rate, immigration, death rate, and emigration. If competition results in individuals not obtaining enough resources to reproduce, the birth rate of the population may decrease. The mothers may be malnourished and not be able to give birth and nurture their offspring. If individuals cannot obtain enough resources to survive, the death rate may increase. If there's not enough competition for the resources in an ecosystem, individuals from other ecosystems may move in, increasing immigration rates. If competition for resources is severe, the rate of emigration may increase as individuals seek other ecosystems in which to live. Competition is a density-dependent limiting factor because the more individuals in an area, the sooner they use up resources. Often, space and food are related. Many grazing animals compete for territories in which to breed and raise offspring. Individuals that can't establish and defend a territory cannot breed. Competition can also occur among members of different species that attempt to use similar or overlapping resources that are limited. This type of competition is a major force behind evolutionary change. Parasites and disease-causing organisms feed at the expense of their hosts, weakening the hosts and causing stress or death. The ticks in the dog's ear in the photo, for example, feed on their host's blood and carry diseases. Parasitism and disease are density-dependent effects because the denser the host population, the more easily parasites can spread from one host to another. The dramatic drop in the wolf population around 1980 due to an outbreak of CPV is a good example of this. At that time, a virus accidentally introduced to the island of Isle Royale killed all but 13 wolves, so that almost killed off the entire wolf population, and all but 3 females, only 3 females left. This drop in the wolf population enabled moose populations to skyrocket to 2,400 because there were fewer wolves to act as predators on the moose population. Those densely packed moose then became infested with winter ticks that caused hair loss and weakness. So the greater density of the moose population actually increased the spread of parasitism and disease. So the growth in the moose population actually ended up causing problems for that population. Overcrowding can also lead to increased stress within a population. Some species fight among themselves if overcrowded. Too much fighting can cause stress, which weakens the body's ability to reduce or to resist disease. In some species, overcrowding stress can cause females to neglect, kill, or even eat their own offspring. Thus, overcrowding can lower birth rates, raise death rates, or both. Stress can also increase rates of emigration. The effects of predators on prey and the effects of herbivores on plants are important density-dependent population controls. One classic study focuses on the relationship between wolves, moose, and plants on Isle Royale, an island in Lake Superior. I mentioned it in the last slide. Isle Royale is an island which is isolated. So the wolves and moose that live there are isolated populations. They don't come and go freely. This graph shows that populations of wolves and moose fluctuate over time. And over a long period of time, they stay pretty constant. But over short periods of time, they go up and down. The CPV outbreak I mentioned in the last slide is indicated on this graph, and it shows a rapid decrease in the wolf population, and that's followed by a rapid increase in the moose population. Two separate sets of data are plotted on this graph. The left and right vertical axes, which are numbered in different increments, show the number of wolves and number of moose. Notice there are always a lot more moose than there are wolves. There's always a lot more prey than there are predators. The general trends we see in this graph are that an increase in the wolf population is usually accompanied by a decrease in the moose population. More wolves mean more moose get hunted and killed. A decrease in the wolf population is usually accompanied by an increase in the moose population. Sometimes the moose population on Isle Royale grows large enough that moose become easy prey for wolves. When wolves have plenty to eat, their population grows. As the wolf population grows, wolves begin to kill more moose than are born. This causes the moose death rate to rise higher than its birth rate. So the moose population falls. As the moose population drops, wolves begin to starve. Starvation raises the wolves' death rate and lowers the birth rate, so the wolf population also falls. When only a few predators are left, the moose death rate drops and the cycle may repeat. So we see that these two populations are very closely tied to each other. When one increases, when one increases or decreases, the other responds accordingly. The population at this time was affected by an outbreak of canine parvovirus. That's what CPV stands for. So when the CPV outbreak hit the wolves, the wolf population was decimated. It went from 50 down to 13. The large decrease in the wolf population is probably due to the virus, and with the smaller wolf population, the moose death rate dropped, which caused the moose population to increase dramatically. We went from 800 in 1980 up to 2,400 in 1996. Look at the wolf population growth around the year 2000. Why is the wolf population growing now? Well, because there's a whole bunch of moose there for the wolves to eat. The large spike in moose population a few years before 2000 increased the amount of prey available, possibly increasing birth rate and decreasing death rate in the wolf population. Think about humans. In some situations, human activity limits populations. For example, humans are major predators of codfish in New England. Fishing fleets, by catching more and more fish every year, have raised cod death rates so high that the birth rates cannot keep up. As a result, the cod population has been dropping. The cod population can recover if we scale back fishing to lower the death rates efficiently. Biologists are studying birth rates and the age structure of the cod population to determine how many fish can be taken without threatening the survival of the population. Herbivory, some plants are plant eaters or herbivores, and their activity is called herbivory. Herbivory can also contribute to changes in population size. This is one of those moose on Isle Royale. From a plant's perspective, herbivores are predators. So it isn't surprising that populations of herbivores and plants cycle up and down, just like populations of predators and prey. On parts of Isle Royale, large, dense moose populations can eat so much balsam fir that the population of these favorite food plants drops. When this happens, moose may suffer from lack of food. Think about the relationship between herbivory and wolf populations on Isle Royale. If moose populations become very large, what will happen to wolf populations? What will happen to plant populations? Well, the moose populations will, after several years, increase. Populations of plants that the moose feed on will decrease. Wolf populations may also increase after the moose population increases, because the wolves are going to have plenty to eat. So all three organisms are closely related. All three populations are closely related. If the plant populations decrease due to large moose populations, what will ultimately happen to the wolf population? Well, too many moose means too few plants. Moose populations will die off through increased predation and through starvation. When a smaller moose with a smaller moose population, the wolf population will eventually decrease.